Ladies and gentlemen, welcome to episode 17 of The Whistleblower. And it is our last show of the year. OMG, oh my God, did we actually make it? Yes, we did. My name is Ian Trent, and joining me is our super panel of water polo personalities. First up, the former Australian Olympic representative and men's coach as well. Good evening in Canberra, to John Fox.
Good evening, Ian, and good evening, fellow panellists. And welcome from Canberra. It's we finally got a bit of rain today, but we're COVID-free, so it's very nice down here.
Yes, well, we're not here. Back in Sydney, thankfully not on the northern beaches. In fact, quite the opposite. It's the former FINA referee and the GM of the Whistleblower, Phil Bauer. Good evening, Phil.
Good evening, Ian. Pleasure to be here for our last show. And it's surprising we got this far.
Episode 17, pretty good. Let's go over to the West now. The former Australian representative and now the new water polo technical director of Singapore Swimming. Hi, Paul Oberman.
G'day, Minnie. How are you? How's things?
Well, congratulations on the job.
Thank you very much. Yeah, no, it would be a really exciting chapter in my life. Something to move forward on, and there's lots of good water polo players up there, and it'll be really exciting to move.
Lots of great facilities too.
Yes.
Okay, and as I suggested last week, most of the water polo fraternity in Australia will be calling you and wanting to have a sleep on your floor when they visit Singapore. I'm sure
No
you'll
problems.
welcome them. Just
All
give
good.
them a beer, is anyone's. Okay, and as usual, Australia's most credentialed referee coming to us from Melbourne. And now they're the good guys. Danny Fly, good evening.
Good evening, all. Thank you very much for having me once again. Yes, we are the good guys now, and every other state needs to take a leaf out of Victoria's book. Would be good.
Yes, we should. Yeah. Dapper Dan, I liked him all along. Okay, communication notes now. If you'd like to ask our very special guest, Tom Hoad, coming up shortly, a question, go down to the bottom of your screen, the Q&A box there, click onto it. Box will open up and you just write your question and we will ask Tom or any of the panel your question, and particularly coming up soon, our rules segment headed up by Danny Fla. So any Q&As, perfect. That'd be absolutely fantastic. We've been through our email, our Instagram, our Facebook page, our YouTube page, all of that stuff here. Can you see it? Scotty in, that's the panel, Scotty in COVID country. Come on with our communication as we do that. Not happening. Doesn't matter. Last show here. Write us an email. Tell us what you thought. And Phil, we've got some fantastic water polo books to have a look at, and they'd be great for Christmas, wouldn't they?
We have, Ian, we have. The Love of Goalkeeping by Thomas Lasik, who's a West Australian. And I haven't read all of it. I started it. And it's very, very interesting, but all the write-ups are fantastic. The Spirit of Bronte, which is my old club, and was a real force in Sydney water polo, written by Tracy Rockwell, who also wrote Water Polo Warriors.
Here we go. I've just thought I'd have a copy of Water Polo Warriors there. If you haven't got this book, and you're interested in water polo history, I know that Tracy's got a room full of them, and Rocco, he'll give you a good price for sure, especially for Christmas. Okay,
Yeah, the third one, Ian, is called Continental Drifting. And it's not about water polo, but it's written by an ex-water polo goalkeeper, Ken Brandon, who is my era and was goalkeeper for Bondi Water Polo Club, who no longer exists, a little bit like Bronte. We were neighbours and we're fierce rivalry, a little bit like Balmain and Drummoyne are now. But it's well worth the read.
Now, I coached Ken in 1985 at the Maccabean Games. He is a terrific bloke and was a pretty good goalie too.
Yeah.
Excellent. Okay. And if you'd like to go to your local bookshop, there it is, On This Day in Sport by you know who. All your good bookshops, you can get one of those too. Got nothing to do with water polo, but it is sporting. Okay. All right. Book reviews, they're good presents too. All right. Let's go to our rules section now. Rules and answers with Danny Flav. It's a bit of an open house today, Dan.
Yeah, it is. We're gonna go over the centre forward, centre back, holding the ball, penalty situation that's we've sort of spoke about for the last 18 episodes. What we've been hearing of late is that the ball comes into the centre forward, the centre forward picks the ball up, turns halfway, and then is sunk by the centre back. Some referees have been playing an exclusion situation, so not letting the centre forward get right around most goals, but halfway around, and they sink the centre forward who's holding the ball. Okay, in this situation, holding the ball rule hasn't changed. The centre forward's still holding the ball, so it can't be an exclusion, and it can't be a penalty because it's not facing the goal. So the only time it can be an exclusion is when the centre forward actually lets go of the ball and the centre back still got two hands sinking in, then that's the exclusion. If he's holding the ball and he's only halfway around, it can't be an exclusion. Okay, where the penalty situation comes into it is that the centre forward has to completely turn around and face the goals. He has to be facing the goals with the ball or without the ball in front of them, and then they're fouled. That's our penalty. There's no in between, there's no exclusion. If he lets go of the ball and he's halfway around, exclusion. If he's holding the ball halfway around, it can't be anything because the rule states if he's holding the ball, there's no foul. Once again, the centre forward has to be completely facing the goals to score to get a penalty awarded to him from the referee. Hopefully, it makes a bit more sense.
Very good. Okay, I've got one, Danny. We attended the Sydney Junior Finals, men's, the other day, last Sunday, and the referees were talking with each other, and they were National League referees, and there was still confusion about goalkeeper ball under. And lo and behold, one of the referees has got in contact with us, Matthew Bartlett, just wondering if we could get a clarification of a 5 metre. Is it called when a goalie takes the ball under when being pressed by an attacking player? In this situation that I think he's referring to, Danny,
yep.
Right? Goalkeeper back to the goal, attacking player front of the goal, face to face with the goalkeeper.
Yep.
Goalkeeper takes the ball away a little bit, takes it under a little bit, and basically prevents the attacker from getting the ball.
If the goalie, if the attacking player is swimming towards the ball, and the goalie comes out and grabs the ball and takes the ball underwater away from the attacker, that's our penalty because he's stopping the attacker from scoring a goal. So he's dragged the ball away, dragged it underwater. That's the penalty. Okay. If the attacking player is swimming in with the ball and he picks the ball up and the goalie comes out from his goals and pushes the attacking player's hand and the ball under, then that's ball under. That's not a penalty. That's still the same rule. It's ball under. But what we could go back to what you asked me, if the goalie drags the ball away and drags it underwater from the attacking player, it has to be a penalty because he's stopping the attacking player from getting the ball by taking the ball underwater.
Right.
That sort of makes sense to how it happened, Min?
Makes sense to me. Hope that answers your question, Matthew. Matthew, all he did was go down to the bottom of his screen, the Q&A box, and wrote his question, and there we are. We've had it answered. What else?
Minnie, I've got one, if I can ask. Daniel.
Yep.
And it's a carryover, Daniel, from a couple of weeks ago where you talked about players, when there's two players in the penalty area, in the exclusion box, and both players come in. The question I had immediately after during the week was, does the excluded player have to stay in the exclusion box until the replacement player re-enters?
No. So what happens is once he goes out through the re-entry box and he's in there and the substitute players come into the box, that player who's been excluded can pop out. And which a lot of times the coaches do that so the players don't get confused.
That's exactly right.
Excluded player can hop out once it's gone through the re-entry box. Not a problem.
and by extension, an excluded player at the end of a quarter, if the team's starting a player down, obviously that excluded player can't start in the water, but they don't have to be in the box either, do they?
No, not at all. No, as long as they have a substitute player ready to re-enter the pool in the re-entry box, that's fine. And the player that was excluded just before the end of the quarter, he can hop out. No problem at all. So you don't have to have two players in the re-entry box to get back in the water. So, good. There's another one we had a couple of questions about as well. Is if after a goal has been scored and the referee starts the game and they take a head count and there's 7 field players in the water, so it's 8 players altogether. What do we do? Well, it's actually the referee's fault for not checking. Both referees' fault for not checking. So what we do is we just stop the game, take the ball out, go back to the halfway line, get the team to take 1 player out, and we just restart it. Simple as that. So it's because it's a referee's mistake. It's not a player's mistake, not the coach's fault. It's our fault for us starting the game with 1 player too many. So we just restart the game. Okay? And on to that, if we start the game and the players have the team has the right numbers in, if one player decides to swim out and not through the re-entry box and hops out the pool, goes down to his bench, this is where we have trouble. That player is then rolled for the game because it's misconduct, because he's actually hopped out of the water, not going out the wrong way, but he's actually hopped out of the water and walked down the side of the pool onto his bench. That's misconduct, disrespect. So that player is then rolled for the game with substitution. But that substitution can only come in after a goal, a timeout, or end of the quarter, and when the referee can come in. That's the only time that player can come back into the pool. Bit of confusion here and there, but that's how it works. So if you hop out of the pool, you are gone for the game. If you just don't go through the entry box, it's just an exclusion.
Isn't it the first stoppage, Dan?
Well, it could be a goal, it could be a timeout.
Also a free throw?
Sorry?
Can't it be a free throw?
No, it has to be a goal, a timeout, end of quarter. I think that's about it. So it has to be a genuine stop you play, not a minor foul. So you've got a quarter time, goal, timeout. That's it. It's the only time the player can come back in the pool.
Exclusion?
No, because that's not a stopping play. Or it's a stopping play. So, but that should be one of the rules. It's got to be a full-on quarter break, timeout, or a goal has been scored. That's the only time the player can come back in. All righty. Happy with those 3? Any other questions from the Paulie? Sure, you got one quick one for the end of the season.
No, I haven't got a question. Can I just point out that the FINA Learning Pool has come out with a new course. It's called Water Polo Rules. It's free to anyone that wants to log into the FINA website. And I went through it today and it's excellent. It explains all the rules. It's got videos for just about every scenario that you can have. It is very good from beginner to experienced referee. They've also, while I'm talking about FINA, come out with another thing called Swim and Play Ball. And it's about coaching kids from 8 to 12 years old. And I haven't looked at it all, but there's a foreword from Dennis Kemeny and a number of other very highly credentialed coaches that give it a big rap. So it's something that, once again, free to anybody that wants to go onto the site.
Okay.
I do have one for you, Danny.
Yes, mate.
Here in WA, there's a number of pools that when we play Wednesday night comp, which is lower grades, or the junior grades on Monday night, they don't have lane ropes that are, that little bit behind that come to the sides and attach. Yep. They are either the goals are just attached to the back or to the wall, or there's a goal or a rope sort of at the back of the goals. For the referees in Western Australia who have those things happening to them, when is it the ball is out of play for a corner or a goal throw? When is it that the ball has to go, has to hit the wall, or is it the ball has to go just past the goal line, or is it what's the rule here in the FINA rule?
It's the width of the ball. So as soon as the ball goes past the goal line or the goal, that's virtually where it would have hit the rope. Depending on how far away or whatever it is. The goal might be only 100 mil off the wall. So if it hits the wall, of course the ball's out. As simple as that. So it's virtually the goal line. It's the width of the ball.
Yeah.
Probably this way. So it's always hard. But it's always good for the referees to have a bit of discussion before the game starts about how they're going to call that. And then also in saying that, it's also good for the referees then to explain to the coaches that they can tell their players, this is when we're going to call a ball out or goalie ball or whatever. But it's always a hard one when you haven't got the correct field of play.
Yeah. Thank you.
Okay.
Pleasure.
That about it, Dan?
That's it, mate. Yeah, we're good. Thank you very much.
Now let's get to our special guest. We've already heard from him and we can see him. He's the former Australian Olympic representative and Australian men's coach. Welcome, Tom Hoad. How are you, Tom?
Fine, thanks, Trent and everybody.
Excellent. You're not in pink tonight?
No, we're in clover over here in Western Australia. We're not allowing any eastern staters to bring the virus over here, so we're quite happy. We might proceed with shortly. We might become the country of Western Australia and we put in an Olympic water polo team in the future.
Oh, well, that'd be reasonable. I don't know if you'd qualify, but there you go. Tom, I know you don't like talking about yourself, but we are here to talk a little bit about you. Let's take you back into the time tunnel. Where did it all start for Tom Hoad with water polo?
Well, I was a swimmer swimming in the Swan River, and I want to remember that we didn't have a heated pool in Western Australia until 1962 for the Commonwealth Games at Beatty Park. Was the first all year round heated swimming pool. And so we used to train in the Swan River. The only decent Olympic pool was in Kalgoorlie, and that wasn't heated. In fact, before the 1940 Olympic Games, Percy Oliver, a Western Australian swimmer, was sent up to Kalgoorlie to work in the gold mines to build himself up and to train in the cold water of the Kalgoorlie Olympic pool. So we swam in the Swan River. All the water polo clubs, there were many, were around the Swan River, and but most of us played another winter sport. I played footy, for example, and everybody else did the same. And we had a big proportion in our club of East Fremantle footballers who then played water polo in the summer as their summer sport. It was the same in the Eastern States. In the early Olympic Games in '56, there was Peter Bennett, Bill McCabe, who played for North Melbourne. There was no all-year-round water polo played in Australia. The Richmond Bars was open. That was about the only pool. So I was a swimmer, and at my club, Melville, had a water polo side to it. So I started playing at about 14 and then went into A grade, I think, when I was 15 or 16, and we trained. And I wasn't particularly good at it, I didn't think, but it enthused me. It was certainly far more interesting than swimming up and down and particularly in cold water. And then after the '56 Olympic Games, we saw how magnificent it was, the sport, and I took it on with a gusto and contributed £50 to bring over Anton Bolvari, who had then remained after the Budapest Revolution, after the Hungarian Revolution. He remained together with many, many other Hungarians in the East Coast, and he came over to Western Australia to coach our club side, Melville, and our state side, Western Australia, and we won the national titles for the first time with him and with another Hungarian by the name of Imre, who's still alive, I believe, living in Melbourne.
So, Tommy, you played for Melville, so you would have played out in the harbour or a river in Perth? And
Yeah,
let
river.
me just go on. How did you get that fantastic pool that you've got now?
Well, I didn't do much of the work, but it was my idea. We had the sugar refinery directly opposite, and they had hot water. We used to swim as kids across the river. They used to have to pull water out of the river through the sugar vapors to cool them and then put it back into the river. It was sickly sweet and stank a bit, but we used to swim through the cold water to get into this warm water. Then I said, let's build a pool here and be able to heat it from the water from the sugar refinery. And that was the idea. And we went firstly, because we were dealing with the Swan River, we had to go to a group called the Swan River Conservation Trust and get their permission to do it. And they said, let's humour these fools. They'll never get permission of the council. We'll give them permission. We then went to the council and they said, let's humour these guys and give them permission because the Swan River Trust will never give us permission. So we had both pieces of paper in our possession with permission to build a pool. And the next day we started, one of the Colemans, who had a big earth moving company, started, and all the neighbours were ringing up saying, what are this mob doing down there? They're taking half the Swan River and blocking it off and all that. But we had permission and we went ahead, and it took us, I think, 5 years to complete it. Every Sunday morning, it was a labour of love. They say I didn't do much of the labour, but nevertheless, that might be true. But it worked, and we initially used the hot water. We put in all the heat exchangers, etc., to heat the pool. But then when they finally sold the Swan River, the sugar refinery, we were the first ones in Western Australia to dig down and get thermal water, 700 metres. We've still got to this day water at about 39 or 40 degrees coming out of the earth, which heats our pool through heat exchangers. So it was a fantastic effort, but with all that, and despite the huge advantage people might perceive in having our own heated pool, we all made a mistake, myself included. We should have made it 25 metres by 33, and we only made it 21. We wanted it to be a water polo pool, and we still suffer from lack of water space for all our teams in our club. When you've got under 18s, under 16s in both sexes, under 14s and now under 12s, together with the seniors, plus all the club members who want to play lower grade, which doesn't happen in Europe. There's a huge demand on the pool, and we don't train enough. It's as simple as that. And we're trying to remedy it. The club, we've got to put in a boom at the Melville swimming pool, which is about 5 kilometres away, and we can access that now a few nights a week. And we're hoping to get into a school pool, which is being run this year by Luke Gavin, who's coaching one of our young club teams in Perth.
Tom, let's just go back to your playing career, and we'll talk about your 4 Olympics that you played, but you actually had a stint in Germany and played for a club over there. How did you get invited to play in Germany?
Well, we did a tour in 1965. Well, let me go back a little bit. Between 1960, we were firstly under control of Australian swimming, who had no idea. They thought if you just swam up and down the pool, you'd be a good water polo player. In 1960, my first Olympics, and 1964, I was the only person who saw an international water polo game. I went and lived in Hungary and watched what they did. Bill Burge Phillips, who was then the new president of FINA, arranged for me to go, and through Balaraiki, the legendary Hungarian coach, and I stayed with Anton. I was meant to stay with Anton Bolbari, but he only had a little flat, and I went and stayed with Kalman Markovic, who looked after me. I taught him English, and I trained every day with Spartacus. with, for example, Danish Kemmeny's father was the goalkeeper. I shot against him every day, and we are to this day still very, very close friends. So that was the first thing. And then, but the point was, only myself and Mick Withers, we were the only two members of the 60 Olympics who played in 64, and we were the only two. Mick had seen them, an international game, only at the Olympics in 60 in Rome, and I had seen them in Europe because I went over in 62, 63. And then I wanted to stay on. I had done a degree in German at the University of Western Australia, and I wanted to complete a postgraduate degree in German literature. And I put it around, and I got an offer from Würzburg Club to be a player coach. They wouldn't let foreigners play then, to coach the juniors, and I chose Ham at a less favourable contract, mainly because they spoke high German. In Würzburg, they speak a Schwabian dialect, which meant my spoken German wouldn't have been not brilliant, but it would have been an inhibiting factor. So I went and played in Germany for a year, looked after the Hungarians when they came to Germany, did a lot of things for the German Association. It was a very nice time. I was a single guy and played water polo every day, and got on a train and went to Münster University for about 4 hours a day. So it was wonderful, and I enjoyed it.
So, Tom, just going back to Western Australia, we almost had a restart of the national championships again this year with state teams. Playing for Western Australia with all those foreign players, the Bolvaris, those guys, was that a bit of a highlight for you and a highlight for water polo in Australia in those days?
Of course it was, but the standard, because we were only dilettantes, part-time training, we couldn't believe the difference between the Europeans and ourselves in ball skills. And when I came back from Hungary in 1963 and coached Western Australia, I said at the time, Bill Burge Phillips asked me to give a little report, and I said, we will never become a force, because the Swimming Association used to say, we're the best swimmers in the world, which we were in the early 60s, 64, won Fraser's, Henrik's, Murray Rose, Conrad's. We had world record holders left, right and centre. And they couldn't understand why it didn't correlate into water polo. And we actually had a reasonably fast team, comparative to the Europeans, but our ball skills were so inferior, it wasn't funny. And when I went to Hungary, I said there were 500 players in Hungary who were better ball handlers and had better ball skills than I had, because they played 12 months of the year, started at a very, very early age. And the embarrassment was in 1964, Alex Kurzegi, who was 44 years of age, Sydney taxi driver. He was diminutive, 5'4", but he was at 44 years of age a much better shooter than anybody else than all of us in the Australian team. So and he was never in the national team of Hungary. He was played for MTK and was a reasonable club player, and that's it. But his skills at 44 were better than ours. And that's because it was a 12 months of the year job, training, and he started when he was 10 years of age, trained every day. And we didn't train every day in those days. Couldn't. Now we can. But even to this day, it's a problem because some of the athletes play winter sports in Western Australia. Unfortunately, it's become because the public schools, the private schools, have the swimming pools and the coaches who earn money by coaching the school teams. It's gone away from any government schools. And to me, that's a little bit a pity to see. And I know the same thing is happening in New South Wales. It used to be the combined high schools, all the players who played for Australia, none of them were from the private schools. now they're the ones with the pools and who are capable of doing not as much as the Europeans are doing, but at least they have pool access, easy pool access to train in the season a bit harder than we could. I'm still coaching our under-18 side in Melbourne, my club, and the under-12s, and I get once a week only in the club pool. If I didn't have access to a school pool, I would be training the team once a week. Well, that is reasonable, ludicrous. No one on earth can produce a team or do anything or produce even good players on one training session a week, or even two. City Beach are better off, frankly, because they've got access to a Challenge Stadium, or HBF as it's now called, and the University Pool, both of which I got built for City Beach. So I keep telling Hughesy how much he is in my debt that I got him access to because the board to the HBF pool, because the board of then Challenge Stadium of the Superdrome Trust, as it was called, I was on the board, wanted to pull the water polo pool out after the World Championships in 1998. And I went off my tree and said, it'll be a big blue in the press if you want to go ahead with that. And they said, what will we do with it? And I said, well, give it to City Beach. They need a home. So they've got better pool access without the problems of running the pool that our club has. So they're actually well off, probably the best. They have the best access to water space, I think, in the country.
So back in those days, was WA and New South Wales, only one team from New South Wales, one team from Queensland, and the best of the best, right? So
well, it was, but you know, the club, as I said, it wasn't a very high standard. Don't let anyone delude you that it was.
No.
Foreigners brought the high standards, and the club's games in Victoria were phenomenal in that period before Bolvari came. There were 1 million expatriates who were playing. There were Yugoslavs, Ivo Stakula and his brother. He died of a heart attack. He was a silver medalist for Yugoslavia. Martin Jaegers, who played for Split and was a Yugoslav swimming champion. They played for Melbourne together with Nicky Ambrush, who went back to Hungary and won a gold medal. And in Richmond, there was Bolvari, Tukic, and the Barnhidi brothers, both of whom were top-class goalkeepers. They were Paul Barnhidi or Joseph Barnhidi, both were in the Hungarian national team squad prior to the 56 Olympic Games in Melbourne. So it was rife with top talent, and they were getting 3,000 spectators a game in the Richmond pool, and in the Melbourne Olympic pool, which had been built for the Olympic Games. It was fantastic club water polo. It then slowly disintegrated when the expatriates disappeared. We pinched a couple, of course, for our benefit in Western Australia. And then we finally understood that you had to train. When I saw Bolvari and how much better he handled the ball than any of us, and how superior he was in many aspects of the game, I thought, well, we're just messing around in Australia. And that's the reason I went to Europe, to try and figure out why.
So Tom, when you went to Europe, and was it the training drills that were different, or as you said in your conversation before, was the amount of time they trained and training? And did you bring any of those training drills back with you?
Well, what they were doing in training is probably no different to what we can do in Australia. And we are probably, with good coaches now that we have, probably are doing quite a large proportion of the drills. I don't think there's any, but what they had is a huge basis. Partizan had 7-year-old kids with a full-blown professional coach, 8-year-old kids, 9-year-old kids. They didn't all turn out to be Olympic champions, but they certainly, and they trained every day. And in the school holidays, they trained twice a day. Now, Partizan were very lucky after the World Championships the first World Championships were held in Yugoslavia. I'm just trying to think of the year, in the 1971, I think it was. They had the pool, used 4 pools vested in their club. They were presented. They didn't have to, like we did, had to build our own pool. They had it vested in them by the city of Belgrade. The same with in Croatia, Mladost. The university pool was given to Mladost Zagreb. Hogue Dubrovnik had the town council build them a pool. They used to train only in the sea. So and in Hungary, because of because it's all over the place, hot mineral hot water, there are pools that were heated all the year round just naturally. And they have got a plethora of hot water pools in every city. Plus the federal government insists, for example, they went out and offered financial help to any new city, for example, Debrecen, Tortabanya, Halmashhetash, these small cities that had a pool, they received support from the federation in the form of a professional coach and finance from the government, provided they gave the pool free of charge to a water polo club for 6 hours a day. So in Miskolc, where a guy called Peter Silliby went, he was over in Western Australia for a while as the women's coach of WACE. He went there and became one of the first coaches of that city, Miskolc, which hadn't had a water polo team for many years, and they received the professional coach and free pool for 6 hours a day. That's a huge difference. No one has got those sorts of advantages in this country. Probably Queensland with his juniors has got the best situation where the pool owner or the pool rentee built the pool at her own expense and has given it only for water polo. And she thinks it was worthwhile doing because you can make a return on it. And I think that's the only way for Australian water polo to go, because we can never compete with our proximity, our distance from Europe and from hard competition, and the inability of the clubs to access water space to train junior kids the same as we train footballers and cricketers. Dad's out there in the paddock throwing, and then you can go to any council in Australia and get free access to an oval where you can go and kick a footy or kick a rugby ball or go to the cricket nets. Just above our pool at the mount where we train, there is a rec with nets on all year round and available for anyone to come in free of charge. But the councils insist when it comes to a swimming pool, they have to charge the athletes. And that's the same throughout the country. And we suffer from that very, very seriously, in my opinion. It's an inhibiting factor for us to become a strong water polo nation. I think there is an answer to it. I think the clubs could build their own pools, indoor, small, doesn't have to be 30 metres, 25 metres you can do skill drills and capture also the learn to swim market. And they could do that quite easily. And so far no one's done it, but it's easy. I've got all the formula, all the pool dimensions. It only has to be 1 metre deep, can be done with a air conditioning unit, reverse cycle heater. The guy in Connor here in Western Australia, he did it. He tells me his bill is $30,000 a year for fuel, and he keeps his pool for learn to swim at 34 degrees. And it's indoors and only 1 metre deep.
Tommy, you spoke about 7, 8, 9, 10-year-olds learning to play water polo in Europe. In Australia, we have 10-year-olds to 12-year-olds playing flipper ball. Is that what they did in Europe, or were they actually learning to play the game and the skills of the game?
They didn't do that in Europe. In Partisan, they trained water polo. They learned the skills, the throwing skills, the movements, everything else, and they played games. Flipper ball, and we've probably got the biggest flipper ball competition in my club in the Southern Hemisphere. But it is a fundraising mechanism and a good fundraising mechanism. It pays for our National League team. There's no dispute about that. But the trouble is we have 1,000 kids on Friday night and Saturday morning, but we don't have the pool space to train any of them in the skills of the game. So they all come down in summer. We have barbecues and sell hamburgers and the parents can drink and they all have a nice time. But we get a couple of skilled kids who maybe go on with it, but we can't do enough technical drills with them because we can't accommodate 1,000 kids anyway in training. And we've taken up Monday nights with the under 14s and under 18s, then Tuesday nights is the girls and the seniors, and Wednesday nights is lower grade. We have the West Australian competition. Thursday night is National League teams or A grade competitions again. We just don't have enough pool time in our own pool to do that. Now, in Yugoslavia and Hungary, they didn't have to earn the money to pay for the pool like we have to do. They had the pool given to them. So they've got the water access without having to do anything, so they can concentrate on teaching the kids the skills of the game.
Okay, Tom, given everything you've said, how, and given that Melville's just been granted one of the 2 performance centres in Perth,
yes,
and you're going to do National League, you're going to do, I think it is 19s, 17s and 15s, right? And
yeah.
Everything you do in your own club, where are you going to get the pools from?
Well, this is, I mean, I've been aware of that problem. City Beach were better placed than us, but there have been a few variations. We've now got better access to Melville, a council pool. We paid for the boom to be put in, and I've already been training, and the A grades have been training there every Tuesday night, the girls on another night, and bit by bit we're getting water access, and we're going to get water access to Corpus Christi pool, we hope, to be able to at least, that is a single limiting factor to how successful we can become. But I was initially skeptical, but I actually, having listened to Robert Neesham, he's very ambitious and he believes we can do it. And I hope he's right. I'm not sure yet that he is, because we still have to be able to produce the juniors, and our juniors don't train hard enough. I'm the first to admit that. At no age, neither girls nor boys. We don't do enough. You can't improve on 2 or 3 times a week and expect us to keep step with the Europeans who are training 5, 6 days a week, and in the summer period twice a day. They're doing Greece. When I was coach and when I played, we were never beaten by Greece. Greece is now a world force. They won both under 20 world championships, and they changed when they changed. They were always professional in Greece, but they changed from being dilettantes to training their juniors. And when I went to Goalkeeping many years ago, they were training their 7 and 8-year-olds every day, twice a day in the summer vacation, every day, twice a day, and once a day in the winter months. And it's no secret that the Goalkeeping team of 2011 or 2012, Habawaba team, they won the under 11s or under 12. 5 of those boys played, or 6 of them, I think, played in the winning Greek under 20 national championships. In the world championships, the FINA under 20, Greece won it. So there was that progress to be seen, but they're in a professional club where they can make a living from playing water polo even in Greece. No one can make a living from playing water polo in this country at the moment. And unless there's something drastic changes, I can't see how we can ever become a professional sport in this country with no access to pool space.
Tom, if you got access to the pools, and just say in the ideal world we get access to the pools, and you've mentioned that the coaches in Hungary and I'm assuming Greece, those other places, they're funded by the federation. What's more important, to fund a coach to teach juniors the skills, or as we do, if you're looking at a professional coach, they're more or less going to be coaching the National League teams or the elite players.
That's the dilemma we're facing at the moment. And we've neglected the early coaching of young kids. I mean, let me tell you, I'm coaching the under-12s. I assure you it's a hard job because they come with no basis in water polo, and it took me about 5 weeks to figure out who had some ability and who didn't, and I made a squillion mistakes, and I do it at Aquinas College every year. I don't know what they're capable of. You can't tell at 11 starting. Whereas if they were in Europe or in Partisan, they will have already had 4 years of ball skills under their belt, and you could easily see those with potential. They come like cream to the top. And so I haven't answered your question directly. We have to have a representation at Olympic Games and at all the high performance. And considering all the things that we lack in this country, our results in both men's and women's, in my opinion, have been fantastic. We have produced top-class water polo players in this country. In my day, Charlie Turner was as good an attacker as there was in the world. And we had other good players, Chris Wybrow, etc., etc. We've got now from our club, Aaron Younger. He was a little bit of an exception. He didn't start till he was about 13. And he's been quite freakish, but he's got enormous ball skills and he is a very great player. There's no dispute about that. And if you've been watching the Champions League in Europe, he was the highest goal scorer in a couple of the games with in a galaxy of superstars. They've got Ivkovic, Mandic, you name it, playing for Pro Recco, and he scored 3 field goals in the last game that I saw against Spandau or one of the German teams. So we can produce them, and it's remarkable that we have. But what you need is 20 of them who can shoot like that. And that's the difference. I mean, I went with our team from Melbourne to AGA about 6 or 7 years ago. And that Solanke, he was 14 at the time. He threw the ball much more accurately and faster than any junior in our country. And he was 14 years of age. And he's ended up being gone into the national team, a left-hander, throws the ball like like a rocket. And those skills are only acquired. But that when he was 14, that was his 7th year of training water polo in Aga Pool, which was heated all the year round. They had a thermal pool 100 years ago in Aga. They got on thermal springs. So they're the things that we have to try and overcome. And the only way I can see it happening is if the clubs build their own little pool where they do learn to swim to get money from it and learn to play water polo. And the kids come, they love it. And it's less boring than swimming. If we've got 1,000 kids each season that we could train in water polo, but we haven't got the water polo space to do it. 1,000.
Can I ask you a couple of questions about the juniors overseas that you saw, the young ones? Firstly, did they modify the equipment they were playing with? Like, did they have small balls? And when did they go to the big balls?
Serbs were starting, I can recall this. They didn't bother with a Mikasa they just had little mini balls that looked like just plain old plastic blow-up balls. But for the 6 and 7 year olds, small ones, probably about equivalent of size 1 from the Mikasa or the Ostim or even what's Cap 7. They've got a small ball size 1. They were using those. They didn't begin with the big balls until they were about 14 or 15. They graduated up the scale because it suited their hands. It's crazy to give, and we don't. We play flipper ball with size 2 and size 3, depending on the age. But to me, to throw in, I think we were playing under 12s, and the first day they threw in a women's size 4. And I said to everyone, you are mad. The kids can't pick up a size 4 at their little hands. It's too small. It's fine for a 6'1" Serb who's only 14, 12 years of age. We haven't got that many of those. And so you've got to give them smaller balls and the smaller goals. It's pointless putting a goalie in a 3 metre wide goal and say, as a 10 or 11-year-old, say, stop the ball. He can hardly keep his legs, his nose above water, let alone stop a ball.
Right. One more question, and I'll hand over to everyone else. When did they start grading the players? Like, was it a herd mentality till they were 12, or did they start putting the best with the best from what age? And
they were happy to keep them in their age group and produce a cohort which they picked. It wasn't, these are the 13 that have applied, 100 applied. They did tests on swimming, egg beater, jumps, all that, even at a tender age, who could already swim. And I mean, they've got heated pools, and you know, they taught kids to swim like we teach them in Australia. And they certainly do that in the pools in Croatia as well, and in Hungary. For example, in Rijeka, they had the pool vested in them, a 4-pool complex. It's magnificent, overlooking the Adriatic Sea. They run it, and they do learn to swim, which the Rijeka Water Polo Club controls. And they, for example, have kids ducking their heads underwater, coming up, picking up a ball and throwing it into a mini goal. That's part of their confidence to get kids interested at 4 and 5 years of age. It's associated with a ball. And that way they want to swim and they want to play water polo. Plus, it's a much more popular sport than water polo is in our country, unfortunately. We're so overwhelmed and overshadowed by football, rugby and cricket, you know, and the increasing reliance of the journalists only on those sports. And minor sports are getting such a raw deal from the press. It's not funny. It's hard to overcome, unfortunately.
Okay, let's go around the panel and have a look at a couple of cities here. Danny, Melbourne. You've heard Tom say, let's start the ball rolling when they're 7 and 8. Need some pools. Can you do it in Melbourne?
No.
No. Right.
No. We wouldn't get the kids.
You've only got 5 million people there.
Yeah.
You can't do it.
We couldn't do it. We have it hard enough to get the kids away from their swimming lessons to come to a pool anyway. So to tell them they should come and play water polo, you could just see their parents going, why would I do that? I'm teaching them how to swim. So
Okay.
But you could do both together, Danny.
Oh, we'd look, Tom, we'd love to. We'd love to. Don't get me wrong.
You've got to have a hole to do it in that.
Yeah, we don't have pools either.
Okay, Foxy, Canberra, you've got a few pools there. Could you do it?
We do have a few pools. Our biggest issue is the cost. And Tom alluded to this. We're paying for the pool hire, and in comparison to Melbourne, I know it's much cheaper. You're paying for the coaches, and the big issue is you're double dipping on the kids. They have to pay admission. And admission at the moment, it's about $4.50 a time, but over a week, that's $20. And then over a year, that's another $1,000. So the cost is a big issue for us.
I think water polo is becoming very expensive for the younger set. It's very expensive.
No kid in Italy in Partizan, they pay. They pay for the coaching. They pay for the right. The kids pay, but in Hungary, no one pays to go into the swimming pool. The swimming pools, when they're officially coached, the clubs control that. They don't have to pay. In Italy, I've never seen a person pay in my life in Italy to go into a swimming pool, a water polo player. And I stayed in Italy for a few months training with Recco, with Eraldo Pizzo and Lonzi and a few of those guys. And I always remember the occasion. I don't know whether this is a well-known fact, but in 1948, Italy won the gold medal. And a guy called Gildo Arena, who was in the team and was a gold medalist, came down to Melbourne, emigrated to Melbourne, and came into Richmond Pool. And to get in the pool to go and see the coach, he had to pay $1. Well, it wasn't $1. It was I don't know what it was, probably still in pounds, whatever it was to get in the pool. I have no idea what the amount was. And went up to the coach and said, hey, how much do you pay to play here? The coach didn't know him from a bar of soap. I said, what do you mean, how much are we going to pay you to play? He said, you've got to pay your entrance into the pool. He said in good colloquial Italian, via fangula. Off he went and opened up a coffee shop. Gildo Arena was a gold medalist in Melbourne who refused to play because he had to pay pool entrance. And that's
hasn't changed, Tom. Hasn't changed in Victoria.
Pardon?
Hasn't changed at all in Melbourne. Still the same. Still got to pay.
Reality of life.
And
okay, now Phil.
Actually, I think the place where they have the best, because all the pools in Canberra, to my knowledge, will at least have got water polo facilities and will allow you to train there. The problem is the cost. And our sport is prohibitively expensive. And then when we have to send juniors overseas, it costs another bucket load of money to go. And that really scares people off. And our dropout rate in this country is huge. And you can't earn a dollar from it, so it's a labour of love. And they're the problems that Australian water polo, instead of putting out nice feel-good papers on what we're going to do and talent identification and all this, and there's nothing wrong with that, but they haven't focused on the essential problems that we have. Lack of water space, lack of getting pools up. If we could get every club a pool in this country, we would go like a house on fire. And I mean a pool where we controlled it with learn to swim and do the swimming and water polo together. And every club could afford to do it. I reckon if you could find the land, you could build a whole complex for $200,000. I'll bet we can. And I've got a video on how to do it.
Mate, you couldn't, in Sydney, you'd have to build out at Burke. Now, let's go. The fact of the matter is, Sydney has the most water polo players in Australia. Yep. Now, we look at all the pools here in Sydney. Phil, you're aligned with the Balmain Club, and Dorney is getting a nice new facelift. Fantastic, right? It's perceived that the Balmain Club have carte blanche over that area. And you could imagine the number of goals you could put in the space, and it would be absolutely fantastic. However, that is not the truth, is it?
Well, probably not, Ian. I mean, we can put a number of goals in at certain hours, but we're limited to 4 to 5 months a year. It's closed virtually every time that we have a heavy downpour. And I think it's open now will be open till 8:30 at night, maybe 9 o'clock. They put new lights in so that the hours might go up. The problem, and the temperature of Dorney isn't great, as we all know. But yes, you can set up 3 or 4 fields. We have our under 12 carnival, where we have, I don't know, 60 teams. I think it's enormous over 4 days, and we just go on and on and on. But what do we do when the pool shuts down? We've got nothing.
Okay.
And land is worth a lot more in Sydney than it is in Perth, unfortunately, Tom.
Yeah.
I'm fully aware of that, but you can buy a factory, you can get a factory unit. You must be able to, you've got a benefactor somewhere in Balmain who's paying for this, that, to bring this player in and that player in. You're paying for Joe Keys to come in. He would be better off convincing him to put his 20,000 or 50,000 into the start of a pool, and you would reap the rewards, not immediately, unfortunately, but in the long term. And we've never made long-term planning in this country for water polo. We're still same
dollars in Sydney.
Why we are not, and we've got worse excuses this year because of COVID, and we're so isolated. Our men's team and our women's team are be battling to get any decent competition prior to the Tokyo Olympics. And everybody knows without the competition, you can't improve. You've got to be able to test yourself.
Can't get
Tom, sorry,
can't get a
but
one-bedroom unit in Sydney under 800,000, Tom, unfortunately.
But
I'll tell you where the place that there is a lot of pools is Brisbane, but they're all owned by private schools, but they've got fantastic pool space there.
You've got private
some
schools.
team.
You've got private schools in Sydney with great pools. Melbourne has. I know Xavier College, the last I heard, they didn't want Melbourne collegians to go there who've been training in the Xavier pool after school hours for a long, long time. And the last information I had, and it's now about a month and a half to 2 months old, they were battling to get into it because of COVID. But I don't know what the situation is now. And the great irony to me is the controller of the pool at Footscray is the president of Melbourne Collegians Club. And Footscray reckon they only get it once or twice a week. I can't understand that. That is beyond my ken. I'm not as pessimistic as you people. I think it can be done. And if we could find another place, our club would do it. We'll do it in Western Australia. We still haven't yet found the place where we can do it economically. But it will be done, trust me, before I die, which will be quicker than you think.
So, Tommy, do you think Water Polo Australia should be aiming that way as well?
That it is such an integral part of our progress. It's a sine qua non for me, without which we cannot progress. There should be more concern about those things than about the rest of the waffle that I hear. You know, about this policy and that policy, I would be much more looking at it. And I think we had an opportunity to go to the Prime Minister and ask him for special circumstances in view of the story, to have a narrative that we could convince people that we're worthy of it if we were able to get the right situation.
So how much are you going to miss the waste support in Western Australia? Because I believe the pool hire was very cheap with them and they got plenty.
No, my understanding, look, I didn't want waste. I thought I wanted waste to continue at least till the Tokyo Olympics. That's no secret. And I don't think anyone else, but it's what's happened has happened. But waste are still providing pool assistance. That's still...
No, they're not.
Do.
Only if the two clubs train together, they will look at paying for the pool space, depending on which pool it is. However, can I just jump in for a sec? We've been talking about the same things for years and years and years now, and we always come up with the same things like there is no pool space, there is no this. This is what I can't understand. Why haven't we moved on from that discussion to find solutions to those things that, okay, we don't have pool space. What are we now doing to find new pools, to get new pools? Why are we not, utilising those things? And on top of that, what is crazy is that the outdoor water polo pool out at HBF was given to High Performance Sport, and it was given to WA Water Polo, and then Water Polo WA gave it on to UWA, City Beach, as you said. But we can't have you're clearly stating the clubs can't, don't have the pool space. So therefore, the kids at the clubs are unfortunately not getting the best opportunities to train and play and perform their skills and get taught the right things. So therefore, it leads down the track that we need a waste. We need the high performance programs because it's needed to build the kids back up again.
That what you're saying is true, but the question is, that's presuming that no club can do it. Well, my first response is I think because City Beach do have special rights at that outdoor pool, and they have first right, and they have some arrangement with the University of WA. I don't know what it is, and I got that pool built. I was on the Hackett Foundation, and we got it built when Brian Blanksby was in charge of the human movement and John Bloomfield. And so they've got a pretty good situation there. And we're realising that we have to change as Picton. And I think there is at least interest in trying to remedy the problem, because it's clearly lack of water space. But the clubs are the ones who do the work in Europe. And I believe that every club in this country, particularly the big clubs, could go and build their own pool. Minnie is very sceptical. You must be able to find a factory unit somewhere that will put a 25 by 16 metre pool in, where you can teach kids the skills all the year round, heated indoor. It's possible. I know it is, because I've seen it done over here.
Tom, our sport is, with government funding, we're reliant upon Olympic results. And are we in danger of, as a sport, water polo, of being omitted from the Olympics? And I know there's been discussions in the past, and with new sports coming in, such as breakdancing, what's it mean for our sport, and what could the flow-on effects be if we did get omitted from the Olympics?
Well, the biggest, I don't see us being omitted from the Olympics, in that Paris is clear and thereafter, provided we remain part of FINA. And there was a strong push from many countries to dissociate ourselves from FINA and have a special water polo. And I think and thought at the time that that was a foolish direction, because it would have meant that if the television results for water polo weren't good, we would end up being thrown out. Provided we are part of FINA, I think we will stay in the foreseeable future. But the biggest problem facing Australia is, as we have had to in the past, in 1964, we had to play a qualification tournament against Spain and Italy in Rome in 1984, to go to the Los Angeles Olympics. And we beat Italy in Rome and lost to Spain, and Spain beat Italy. So we qualified third, and Italy beat Spain. So it was a 3-3 tie, and we had the weakest goal averages, and we qualified for the Olympics. And in Berlin, for Atlanta, the Australian team failed to qualify. The biggest fear facing me, or I believe it's the biggest fear, is that if they open it up to open qualification and not based on geographical location, we're safe as long as we've only got New Zealand to beat, even though they're making progress. New Zealand, their junior team was unlucky not to beat our under-20 team at the national team. An own goal by a blocker kept Australia in the picture. But regardless of that, because there are a dozen European nations now who are doing the work, whether it's Romania, France now, because of Paris, all the French clubs have got oodles of money and are bringing in players. They've got Spain is on the up. The biggest thing in our favour is that the women's competition isn't relatively as strong as the men's, in that the strong water polo nations, Montenegro, Croatia, Serbia, Romania, Hungary takes it seriously, Italy does, Spain does, but the others nowhere near as seriously as they've taken the men's program. So Partizan doesn't have a women's program of the same quality that they do have for their juniors. So I think the women have probably got an easier run than the men. But I think our men have got a good potential team this year. The biggest problem will be to try and get the competition that Elvis needs to do it. I know Charlie was talking to me very briefly about trying to get a bubble going, and I think that's the only way to go, because if we can't get competition and the best we can do is go straight to Tokyo, and play in a tournament without any competition. With the best will in the world, we're going to fail. And I think we're going to have a good team, men's team, as well as a good women's team. And we need the competition badly. But we have to make that advocacy to the Olympic AOC and to explain to them how important it is for our sport to have the competition. And because the people in Canberra wouldn't know, John, they wouldn't know what we need. They're just bureaucrats sitting on their backside theorising about how to win a medal when none of them would know. I've got no faith in the Sports Commission, I'm afraid, to help us. They might help us with a bit of money, but they'll be the first to throw us out if we don't succeed. And in their eyes, succeeding is not getting a medal. Failing is not getting a medal. And we all know how big a harder task that is.
We heard about that last week from the CEO. Now, Tom, is water polo attractive enough to the audience at large? That means just everybody, Joe Bloggs off the street. And can a hybrid version like beach water polo make it better in your opinion?
Look, there's no question that water polo is a difficult game for the spectators to understand. And FINA have to do more, and we have to do more to make it explicable, understandable to the average punter. And I can tell you this is a true story. In 1998, when we got the World Championships in Perth for the second time, Kerry Stokes was Channel 7 and Channel 9. In 1991, when we had it, both of them said, we don't want to film the world, to video the World Championships and to do all that. It won't rate. And the ABC, we had to pay them $660,000 to publicise and to send the signal around the world, which was part of the contract with FINA. And when in 1998, the ABC rated the socks off all the commercial channels for that week. We were lucky. That was when Ian Thorpe was swimming, and we had a big, very strong swimming team. But even our water polo got good publicity from it. And then in 1998, the atmosphere had changed, both 9 and 7, when we were awarded the World Swimming Championships. We had 500,000 in the budget, and they bid the fee between them up to 5 million. And I believe it would have gone further, but the government told me to stop and not to get greedy. And when I went to Kerry Stokes after he'd won the bid of $5 million, we sat down in a fish restaurant in Netherlands, and I said, what do you want for your $5 million? And he said, swimming every night, that's great rating. Synchronised swimming, they all like to see a girl's leg up in the air. Diving spectacular on television. And he knew where I came from. He knew I was from water polo. And I said, and what about my sport? He said, do you want the truth? He said, we didn't have a team in Atlanta in 1996. Australia, the only Olympics after 52 that we have never been represented at, unfortunately. And he said, we showed some water polo, and in the middle of the night, people were watching the Olympic channel. We showed water polo, and we showed also Greco-Roman wrestling. And there were, at that stage in Australia, about 2 Greco-Roman wrestlers. And people watched, they had all this, they have a little mechanism where they can tell who's watching what. And when they looked at water polo for about 5 minutes and then changed channels because they can't understand it. And he said, we believe water polo is too complicated. This is Kerry Stokes speaking. We believe it's too complicated for the average sporting person who likes sport to watch. It's not explained clearly enough. The rules are difficult to understand. There's too much whistling, da, da, da. And I said, that's fine. Thanks, Kerry, for that. So you don't want water polo. He said, I prefer not to have it. And I said, that's no worries. We'll go to Channel 9. They want to bid more, and I'm sure they'll show 9. He then leant over very condescendingly and patted me on the shoulder and said, don't worry, we'll show water polo. But I just told you the truth. And I believe he did tell me the truth. So the lesson I took from that is that's from a commercial television person who says that water polo is too difficult for the average Joe to understand. And we have to simplify that. That is FEMA's duty and the water polo TWPC to think about that. And
so, Tom, can I just come in there? So we just spoke about how it's hard for the audience to understand what's going on. So do you think with the TWPC have just changed some rules of the game? Do you think that's beneficial for the game now, or it hasn't changed at all?
I think the decision of the, I was originally against it. It was Lolo Byrne's suggestion, and he put it up when I was the delegate to the FENA conference, and I spoke against it, and we won the day, but I now say I was wrong. His idea was that if you would get inside water and you picked up the ball, they couldn't give you, even though you were in possession of the ball, they couldn't foul you, and it's a penalty. And he did that. His reasons, which in my opinion are valid, and I disagreed at the time, I was wrong, I believe, with hindsight. It's improved the game that people are now prepared to drive in the hope of getting the penalty. It's made it more understandable, similar to basketball, where if you're going up in the act of shooting a goal, it's called whatever it is, they touch you on the hand, it's a penalty, it's two frees. So I think the rules can be even, but the biggest problem is what's seen underwater and clearly the heaviness of it. And that somehow they've got to solve that dilemma so that people can understand the rules. The referees, like in USA football, in gridiron, should have a microphone at all times and explain the decisions. They should take their time because it's a difficult game to referee. Water polo is played in the pool, half the body's underwater. It's difficult to see what's going on. And if you haven't played the game, it's my opinion, a very, very difficult sport to referee. And as you know, in Seoul, we were thrown out of the top 4 by a mistake of the referee, of both referees, and not awarding Joe K's a penalty. And in my opinion, the weakness is we should have television replay so that those decisions can be rectified like they do in Aussie rules football and in cricket, where they show the replay and the referee calls for a timeout to have a look at it before the game plays. I know it's difficult because in water polo, if they miss the goal or the goal wasn't a goal, then there's a counter attack going the other way. And if they made the wrong decision, hold it up. But that's better for that to happen, in my opinion, to overcome that problem than there is by not using video replays for referees to check their decision. And had we been able to use video replays in Seoul at the World Championships, Australia may have won the first men's medal at the World Championships.
Tommy, we're running very quickly out of time. So I just want to ask a couple of questions about you, if I could. The biggest highlight for you as a player, and then the biggest highlight for you as a coach?
Oh, difficult to say. I haven't thought about the answer, but probably as a player in my last game, or in my last Olympic Games in Munich, where we drew with Greece 7-7 and played well. I played well, in my opinion. Much better than in earlier Olympics, where I was very immature and wasn't very good at defence, and I wasn't very good defence ever, unfortunately, and that's an integral part of 50% of the game. But I scored 4 goals, and Greece, we were better than they were, but they went through because the Greek coach was Hungarian whose son was the captain of the Hungarian team. And we then depended on our result against Hungary. Against us, the Hungarians went 100% flat out to tear us apart. And against Greece, they floated on their back. So Greeks went through into the top 8 based on goal percentages. That was both a disappointing, and Zoli Kojas, by the way, came around, and István Gergely, who later coached our girls to their first gold medal, or the only gold medal from an Australian Olympic team, came around and apologised for what happened. But that's how it operated in those days. And that was just both enjoyable that we beat Greece, who were a full professional team, and disappointing that we didn't go through into the other bigger round. We probably wouldn't have got much further up the track, but it doesn't matter. And as a highlight, I don't think was it an Olympic Games. The best result that I believe Australia played was when the Soviet Union were completely at their zenith, and we played them in Sweden and drew with them 10-all. And I played Russell Sherwell on the Schwanneradze and played a maniacal press. Bear in mind, from those days, when you pressed and fouled out, there was you couldn't throw a shot at goal like you can today, which makes that style of game much more difficult to play. I played a frenetic press and foul. Glenn Townsend was our goalkeeper, 6'5", 6'6", long arms, came out of the goals because they couldn't shoot from the free throw. And I had little Russell Sherwell swimming right around from side to side on the Schwanneradze, and he didn't score a goal. And the next day, I had 4 phone calls from national coaches. So I can tell you 2 of them, Radko Rudic and Bill Barnett, who was then coach of USA, said, "How did you stop Schwanneradze? Is it true you played your smallest player on him?" And to me, I think all our guys remember that. And it was interesting. I don't think you can't do it today, because if you foul and the goalie comes out, they pot it in from 8 or 9 metres very simply. But that's how we played it, and it was a very successful event. And we'd gone there via America, and all the blokes were jet lagged, so it was a very good achievement. I don't know whether that answers the question. And we beat, the second thing, which is of equal value in my mind, was in 1978 in Berlin, Italy won the World Championships. We played them in the first game of the tournament, and I got the boys up at 6 o'clock. They were swearing and carrying on. They didn't like it. I put them in a cold pool, and we should have beaten Italy. We were 5-3 up, and the 2 Dutch referees gave 2 penalties and took a goal off Charlie, saying that as the ball was thrown on his hand going towards goals, he had his other hand pushing off the player behind him. It was complete hogwash. And Italy went through and won. But after that, in Moscow, we beat Italy 3-2. Robbie Bryant threw the last goal to put us 3-2 ahead for 7th position. And then in Rome, for the qualification, we beat Italy. And we beat Italy on goal averages to go through into the final round in Los Angeles. They were in the bottom 7. So from the World Championships in 78, we never lost to them thereafter, from Rome through to Los Angeles. And that was when the Magistris and good players were playing. So we had good results against Italy.
Well, Tom, that just about takes us out. It's been absolutely fascinating talking to you, but unfortunately we could do it for another hour, but we have run out of time, and we do appreciate your time. And no doubt we could do it again at another time, and we can just go for another hour and a half. So thanks very much for joining us. Gentlemen, thanks for your questions and also your opinions. Right throughout the 17 episodes that we've had. They're very valued and appreciated. Thank you very much, Danny, Phil, John. Tom once again. Paul, good luck, mate, overseas. And also to Noel and Scotty in the background there, making it all happen. Thank you very much. Scotty, take care in COVID City, please do. And that is the last episode of The Whistleblower for 2020. And we hope to be back in 2021. Thank you for joining us.
Thanks, Benny. Thank you, everybody.